On the next Food is Love.
2017 was a historic year for the Virgin Islands when they were slammed by not one, but two hurricanes within a period of 2 weeks. It was a devastating 1-2 punch. Many people were displaced, homes destroyed, and the island were left with crippling damage to the infrastructure. It was at that very moment in time when Telly Wood and Sara Spencer were prepping to open their first restaurant. In the wake of the storm, their location were destroyed. With no place to live and their prospect suddenly gone, they made a pinch decision to move to St. Louis to open up their Caribbean comfort food spot, Jerk Soul. At first glance, St. Louis may seem far away from the islands, but when a hurricane passes through the Caribbean, you never know what might blow into town. I'm on my way to get a first-hand look how they're bringing those tastes to the Lou.
On the next episode of Food is Love.
Hi, and good evening, everybody. This is Joe Prosperi with Chew and the Lou and the Nine Network. I am so excited to welcome you guys to our, what month is it? October Chew and the Lou live event. We're going to have a really great time tonight. You guys just watched an awesome trailer for Monday night's episode of Food is Love. I'll talk about that in just a second. But right now, things are going well at 9, and we're excited to have all you guys here for a great conversation around local food, a great PBS, a show we air here on 9 PBS and across the country, and to meet with a local maker from the Missouri area that really does some awesome food. So like I said, things are going well at 9 right now. We just wrapped up a very successful fundraising drive in September. So thank you to all that participated in that. We're all still working from home, so welcome to my bedroom office. But even though a lot of us at 9 are working from home, we're still churning out really great content. Next month, we're working on a kids and race and racism conversation for those of you that have children and want to talk about that topic. We've got a documentary coming on the USS St. Louis, the commissioning of that naval ship that bears our city name. Living St. Louis is chugging along right now. It came back from a summer hiatus really, really strong. It's got great new episodes. If you watched it on Monday night, you saw an awesome segment on Switzer's Candy, which is made in St. Louis, has a great history in St. Louis. If you didn't see that, make sure you check that out because it's a great food connection on Living St. Louis. Things are going great with Chew and the Lou. We are excited about that next episode is Food is Love on Monday night, coming up at 7:30. It's going to feature Chef Lasser going to Jerk Soul. And so we're going to really get some great spicy food. We're going to get a great story there as we do with every one of those episodes. We're over 1,600 members on the Chew and the Lou Facebook community, which is rocking. People are posting stuff, funny memes, great recipes, things they're seeing throughout town. So that's great. We did also start Twitter feeds and Instagram accounts for Chew and the Lou. So if you haven't followed them yet, please do. And as an extra bonus for people that are posting really cool pictures of the food they're eating in St. Louis, we may cross-post those over to Instagram for everyone else to see. And we have a lot of restaurants and chefs that follow us on Instagram already. So I do want to introduce my cohort, Lydia Gwin. Lydia, things are going well for Lydia as well. Let me pop her up on the screen here real quick. Lydia is now a culinary instructor at the Kitchen Conservatory in Clayton. So that's new since the last time we talked to everybody. And she's been doing some great things over there. She had a kids cooking class just yesterday, and my daughter Amelia went to that. And not only did she come home smelling like fresh tortillas, she also knows how to make guacamole now. So thank you, Lydia.
I do what I can. Just for the youth of St. Louis. I do what I can.
Awesome.
And
now I want to introduce, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say we had a blast. The kids did amazing stuff, tortillas from scratch. They learned so much about Mexico and the Mexican cuisine that we went through. It was incredible. So.
Awesome. And now I want to invite our first special guest of the evening. Things are going well for her too, probably, because you can see her on a variety of things. She is the host of TasteMakers, shown nationwide on public television stations, as well as here on 9 PBS. She was the host of Feast TV here on 9 PBS. She's previously hosted many of our Taste and See events in the public media commons that many of you have gone to. And she's the founder of Feast magazine that is ubiquitous with the food scene here in St. Louis. You can pick it up anywhere you go to eat food and learn about some of the other great things. So big round of applause. Please help me in welcoming Miss Cat Neville.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
All right. So we're real excited. Cat, how are you doing?
I'm great. And I'm surrounded by food, including delicious cheese from Sara, who you're going to meet later. So I am doing pretty well, I'd say.
All right. Well, we're real excited. We're going to dive in just a few minutes to a small clip of your show from Green Dirt Farms, an episode that you titled Warm and Woolly, which just this kind of cool fall day makes you just want to curl up and eat cheese, which is what I like to do most of the days. But let's kind of hear what's going on with you. What have you been up to during this pandemic? We're obviously doing fun things from home, like Chew and Lou Live. What are you filling your time with during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, Feast is, you're actually, Lydia, you're holding the current issue of the magazine. Feast is chugging along, and for TasteMakers, I've actually, like right when the pandemic hit, I tried to figure out what could I do to help the makers in our community. And so what I decided to do was go ahead and launch an online shop. It's called the Makers Marketplace. And so I've been working on adding a number of makers to that, where you can come to the website, which is just wearetastemakers.com, and you can browse through vendors from across the country who are all making sustainable artisan products, everything from seaweed and mussels to Green Dirt Farm cheeses. And so all the orders are sent directly to the makers and supports them. So I've been building a lot of content around it. I've been actually doing some cooking videos and some feature stories. So, I mean, it's been an incredibly busy time, even though I have not been traveling and producing any content like on the road.
That's awesome. So what's going on with TasteMakers? We've seen 2 seasons from you so far. They've been incredibly successful. I'm a sucker for food that is presented in a beautiful way. And so therefore I'm a sucker for a show that presents food in a beautiful way. So, what's going on with the 3rd season? Are you working on it? It's probably a lot harder to do right about now.
It is, for obvious reasons. When I produce the show, I'm on location with these makers for about 5 days. So it's not just kind of like dropping in and doing a quick interview. It's a pretty intimate process. So this is just not the time for that. Everything's kind of on hold. And I'm actually looking for makers across the country to be featuring in the 3rd season. My goal is to release in fall of 2021, obviously depending on what we can do in terms of travel and all that. But yeah, I mean, season 3 is in the works. It's just on hold for the moment.
Completely understandable. Lydia, do you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna, I know that there's so much that you have your hands in the culinary scene. The Feast TV, TasteMakers, did you ever anticipate it to grow as big as it has so far?
No, I mean, I actually started doing this work over 20 years ago. I actually founded Sauce Magazine, sold that, founded Feast Magazine, launched Feast TV. And, getting to the point to be able to produce TasteMakers was just this natural expansion of the work that I've been doing. Doing Feast TV, I shot Feast TV for, I think it was either 7 or 8 seasons. And that took me across the entire state of Missouri. And being able to be on the farms, in the distilleries, at the wineries, in the breweries, that was really what I fell in love with. And so when I got the opportunity to launch TasteMakers, I really wanted to zero in on the maker movement. Obviously, food is a huge subject. It's everything from Switzer's candy, like you're talking about, to, sheep farming that we're going to hear about from Sara. So it's such a broad topic. And when I really thought about what really kind of gets me excited, the stories that really kind of light me up, it was those makers, the craftspeople. So, it's a long rambling answer, but I never envisioned that I would have a national show. And every time I interact with people who watch the show, I get emails from people every day, from around the country who are like, I love this and I love that, and thank you for introducing me to this person or that person. And it's just incredible to see the reach of PBS, frankly, and to be able to produce this type of content that is designed to educate and enlighten and inform as well as entertain. And I think that's PBS is pretty much the only place where you can get content like that.
Sure.
Well, you kind of jumped in and took one of the questions I had, which was actually, how do you define what a tastemaker is in the sense of your show? But to take that a step further, how do you identify who your tastemakers are that you're going to talk about? I mean, there's so many tastes out there. Like, where do you start?
So I start with a spreadsheet, and I start with kind of the map of the country, because truly, TasteMakers is in 98% of American homes. So we are across the entire country. So I want to make sure that it's very broad in terms of the coverage that we give. And I don't want to repeat topics or subjects in the season. So if I have a cheesemaker like Sara, I'm not going to do another cheesemaker she was in our first season. So I'm not going to do another cheesemaker that season. And I want to do things that are very approachable, like grains and breads, but then I also want to do things that are kind of out there that you might not be terribly familiar with, like escargot or seaweed. And so I try to balance it in terms of areas of the country, as well as the type of product that you're going to learn about. And my goal with the show is to introduce you to these makers, the people who are doing things in ethically, sustainably, environmentally responsible ways, but then also kind of dive into the process, because that's kind of where the magic is. I mean, yes, it's the people, but it's also, okay, so how is cheese actually made, and why would you use sheep's milk rather than goat's milk, all that kind of stuff. So all those questions that percolate in people's minds when they're watching food television, I try to answer those with the show.
Do you think you'll anticipate a Tastemaker magazine to go alongside it, or will you keep that the same? Just keep feet local?
Probably not a print magazine. I would anticipate a Tastemakers cookbook or a Tastemakers publication in that sense, mainly because, I mean, frankly, I've been seriously in the kitchen a ton, developing recipes that feature the products from all these different artisan makers, and it's amazing. They send me all this fun stuff, and then I get to play around with it and just kind of develop my own recipes. So that's something that I would definitely anticipate doing.
I'm super
Awesome.
excited about that.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk here just a minute about one of your favorite tastemakers. That's why we invited her to the show tonight. But give us an example of a tastemaker or a taste that just absolutely blew your mind in the filming of your show. One that you may have been expecting everything to taste good, but what really stands out is that one that just blew your mind.
So this is this will surprise you, Joe. I'm taking your question and I'm turning it a little bit, because what I think the story in the last season, the second season, that really I thought blew my mind was the story of the Button family. They are Akimel O'Otum people who live just outside of the Phoenix metro area, and their family is bringing back the tepary bean, which is this bean that was cultivated on their lands in the Akimel O'Otum community for centuries. And Ramona, who is the matriarch of the family, she founded this farm back in the 70s after the elders from her community asked her to please bring this bean back, because it wasn't just a way to feed their community from a nutrition standpoint, it also was a deeply rooted part of their culture. And that story really resonated with me, because it was so much more. To me, it showed how easily we disconnect from the deeper meaning of food. It's like, okay, I'm hungry, or I'm craving this or whatever, but there's a lot more to it. And so that was really meaningful to me. And back when we could do live events, I did an event called Meet the Makers in Phoenix with the Button family, and brought them up on stage and had the chance to kind of talk about their experience. And afterwards, Ramona came to me, and she's in her 70s now, 60s, 70s. And she was like, I felt the presence of my parents here with me, telling the people the story of this food. I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. So to me, Yes, there are these amazing, gorgeous, sexy dishes that you can try. But the most meaningful story that I walked away from in the last season was the one of the Button family and the work that they're doing in reviving indigenous food culture.
Well, that's fantastic. And that leads us to another fantastic story that I'm going to go ahead and have you tease the clip we're going to watch here now, which was from season 1 of TasteMakers. The episode was Warm and Woolly. Tell us about it.
Okay, so in the first season, I knew that I wanted to cover Sara and her cheese. So having been obviously the publisher of Feast and also creating Feast TV, I had already covered Sara's work, and there are very few sheep's milk dairies in the country, and she is doing things the right way, and her cheeses are amazing. So I was just really happy when she said yes and let me come to the farm and document just a little bit of the work that she does.
Fantastic. So before we jump to that clip, just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions for either of our guests today, both Cat and Sara, when we meet her in a moment, drop those in the chat window now, and we'll start compiling those for the Q&A session later in the show. But we'll go ahead and run that clip.
In the rolling hills north of Kansas City, there is a sheep's milk dairy that builds flavor in its cheeses from the ground up. Come with me to Green Dirt Farm on this episode of TasteMakers. I'm Cat Neville, and I've been telling the story of local food for about 20 years. In that time, I've seen the American food movement explode in tiny towns and big cities from coast to coast. In TasteMakers, I explore the maker movement and take you along for the journey to meet the makers who define the flavor of American cuisine. There are very few sheep's milk dairies in the United States, and so in this episode of TasteMakers, you're in for a treat because we are heading to Weston, Missouri to meet the team behind Green Dirt Farm. Their incredible range of sheep's milk cheeses start right here in the prairie.
My aunt owned a gourmet cheese shop in New Jersey when I was a teenager, and I went there and helped her sell cheese at the holidays. And I learned, from her what really great cheese was, but it didn't even occur to me that I might make cheese. When we bought the farm, I started looking at what are some of the small farm businesses that can be not just environmentally sustainable, but also economically sustainable on the kind of acreage that we had. And I hit on, just by researching and talking to people, value-added dairying, where we made cheese on the farm. And it was at that moment that I realized this is what I should have been thinking about all along. Ooh, cucumbers, good idea.
Good idea.
Welcome back. I cannot tell you right now how excited I am that the next person we are talking to is responsible for this deliciousness that I have been nibbling on during that beautiful clip. And I think you learned a little bit about her as well when you watched Kat's introduction. So Sara, how are you? Thank you for joining us. So
Thank
Sara,
you so much for having me.
yes.
I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I think that we're going to need to really divulge into the sheep milk cheese because I think I found a brand new favorite in my life. Tell us a little bit about the sheep milk and the Green Dirt Farm that you run.
That's great. Yes. Well, we started as a sheep dairy in 2008 was our first year of commercial cheese making. And that fresh cheese that you're holding is one of our first cheeses that we ever made. It's a fresh, soft, spreadable sheep's milk cheese. And we make it in 6 flavors. And that particular one you're eating is made with garlic and parsley and chives and a little bit of lovage, if you know that herb. It's really fantastic. We love it.
Wow.
But we also make it in just plain, which is what Joe had. And we make a rosemary, a nettle, which is just what it sounds like, really nettles, and spicy chilies, and garlic peppercorn.
Well, I'm on a mission now to find those other flavors too, because they're delicious. So tell me the difference. Okay, I think most of us are used to eating cow's milk cheese.
Sure.
We probably had goat milk cheese and used to it being very sort of tangy, have a little bit of flavor too. Can you share with our viewers what the profile of a sheep milk cheese is like?
Yeah, well, sheep milk is a very traditional milk in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, but we're not very familiar with it here in the United States at all. But it's a very sweet and lovely tasting milk. It's very much like cow's milk, but richer. It has a lot more milk solids in it than cow's milk does. And so it's sweeter and richer. It has this lovely mouthfeel, almost like half and half. And it doesn't have the same flavors that goat milk has at all. It doesn't have those goaty flavors. It's very sweet and similar in flavor to cow's milk. But what's really special about it is that when it ages, it develops these wonderful flavors of caramel and toasted nuts. And that's one of the reasons why it's so much beloved in other places that are more familiar with it and have been milking sheep traditionally for thousands and thousands of years.
Now, I know that the word enzymes is used a lot when we talk about cheese and especially sort of the flavor that it gives off. Are there different enzymes that are used to making a sheep milk cheese?
Well, actually, milk is full of natural enzymes, but we also use a natural enzyme for setting the curd, and that enzyme is called rennet. For those of you who are familiar with cheese making, that enzyme helps the milk proteins stick together and form the curd, bring all the milk solids together to become one big solid that is the cheese. We also use cultures, lots of cultures in cheese making. We use fermentation cultures, and we use something that cheesemakers refer to as adjunct cultures, which are cultures that contribute to flavor, but don't contribute to the fermentation of the milk.
Awesome.
So it's funny how Lydia is the one, she's the chef of the two of us, and she asks the very scientific questions. I'm just the eater of the group. So I'm going to go basic with my first question, which is how did you come to be a sheep milk creamery? Like, is that something that you woke up as a small child and were like, I'm going to make sheep's milk cheese? Like, where did this come from? Like, how did you land where you now are?
You know, it's so funny. It was like a strange happenstance epiphany that sort of brought all of these things that I had done in my life to that moment together. But I had no knowledge of it. And I didn't at all feel like, I was leading up to that. It just dawned on me I should do it. The things that happened in my life that made me become a cheesemaker are that I grew up on a series of small farms, and so I wanted to have that life for my children because I loved it so much myself. But I also had an educational background in chemistry and microbiology, and actually chemistry and microbiology are the scientific foundations for cheese making. Little did I know at the time that I was going to become a cheesemaker, but I have also had an aunt who owned a gourmet cheese shop in New Jersey in the 70s, and I would go there and help her sell cheese at the holidays. And she's the person who taught me to love fine cheese and to really care about cheese. And so when I was starting my own small farm business where I wanted to raise my kids, it occurred to me that maybe I should try making cheese as a way to make a sustainable business. And that's when I sort of hit on the idea that cheese making might be a great thing for me to do. And I've never looked back.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to share my screen here real fast for my next question, because my question is really like, what is life like on the farm and how big are your flocks? So I was looking for pictures and I actually came across your website, and I'm sharing your website on the screen here just for a second because I want people, I'm going to refresh it to the beginning. it's idyllic. Like, look at these little sheep bopping through a field. They look happy and free, like they're going to make the most delicious cheeses you could ever imagine. Is that what is life like on your farm? What does the day look like on the farm for you and your workers and your family that work there?
Well, it really is that idyllic in some ways. Some days it's not, of course, but most days it's really, we just love being there. We have a flock of about 150 ewes that get milked twice a day, about 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And, we also partner with other local dairies to bring us their milk to supplement what we have on our farm. And we accumulate the milk in a refrigerated tank. And then when we're ready to make cheese, which is just about every single day, except on the weekends, we make a batch of cheese. And then on the weekends, we're taking care of the cheese in aging, because after the cheese is made, most of our aged cheeses go into an aging room for a period of time to develop their rinds and to develop more flavor before they're ready to be sold. So, we're working on the farm. We move the sheep frequently. I like to tell people that one of the sort of foundational things for our farm is that we're a grass-based sheep dairy, and we're grass-based for 3 really important reasons. One is that we know that if you feed a dairy animal a diverse grass diet, and the diversity in the grasses is really important, but if you feed them a fresh grass diet rather than the conventional kind of dairy diet that most dairy animals get, then you can concentrate a lot more flavor compounds in their milk than if they're fed that kind of conventional dairy diet. But we're also grass-based because we know that it's the most environmentally sound way to do dairying. We know that when you manage the pastures really well, you encourage really great deep root systems that can help build topsoil and can help sequester carbon in the soil and can help protect our waterways and protect the topsoil from erosion. And then the third reason that we're grass-based is we think it's the most humane way to do dairying. Our sheep get to be outside, enjoying, eating the food that their bodies were evolved to eat, and frolicking in the grass and behaving naturally and socializing naturally with the other sheep in the flock. So those are all the reasons that we're grass-based and why it's super important to us that our sheep get the vast majority of their nutrition comes from our grasses on our farm.
Okay, so I'm hearing all of this and I'm putting together Green Dirt Farms. Is that part of the reason why you have the name that you do, or is there a special story behind that?
No, absolutely. Green Dirt Farm, the name Green Dirt came from the fact that I wanted the name to represent our core bedrock values, and green dirt being environmentally sound practices in our soil is what we meant to convey with the name Green Dirt. We wanted to be fun with it too, though. So my kids and I talked about it, and the name reminds us of green eggs and ham. And we have a lot of customers who are like, "What is green dirt?" And I love telling them what it is and what it is to us and what it means to us.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question about sheep. And this is, I know that there are cows that are just meant for meat and there are cows that are for dairy. Now, is it the same for sheep, or do you still get wool from all of these sheep that you have in your pastures?
No, that's absolutely true. Our sheep are specifically bred over thousands of years, actually, to produce more milk than a wool sheep. Our sheep do produce wool, and we do have to shear them, but their wool is not very high quality. So you wouldn't want to spin a sweater, make a sweater with it. But we do sell it to a bedding company and for stuffing mattresses, which I think is a really neat thing to do with it.
That's awesome. Okay, real quick, talk to me about cooking with sheep's milk. I know that the enzymes a lot of times in goat and in sheep's milk kind of make it hard for it to brown as easily as it does with the cow's milk. Is that true for sheep's milk, or is that a wives' tale that I've heard?
I think that browning is that Maillard reaction, which is based on the sugars, and really the sugar in milk is lactose. And so, sheep milk has just as much lactose as cow's milk does. And so it should have no trouble browning. But actually, I don't have any experience with it, so I don't know that for sure. But I know that you can make a wonderful cajeta is the name of the goat milk version of it. It's caramel that you make with goat milk. And dulce de leche is the cow's milk. And you can make a sheep milk version of it too by just cooking the milk for a very, very long time on a low heat. And it turns brown and caramelizes and is, so good.
Sounds amazing.
That's awesome. I love that. I love dulce de leche, so I'm going to look into that.
Yeah.
But this is a really great segue now back over to Cat, who's actually going to walk us through a cooking demo utilizing some Green Dirt's farm cheese. And Sara, stick around. Don't go anywhere because we have more questions for you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So yes, you can cook with these cheeses. And one of the great things that you can do with a sheep's milk cheese, a fresh cheese in particular, is make a really easy cream sauce for pasta. And if you've never done this, it's a great trick. Number one, it is better for you than a lot of heavy cream, but also it's so easy. So here I just have some shallots that, as you can see, I've caramelized. I added in just a little bit of fresh garlic, and now I have some mushrooms, which I'm going to turn up the heat so that they can kind of cook relatively quickly. And while these are browning, I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about this recipe. So when I found out I was going to have the opportunity to connect with you guys, I thought it was really important to show ways to utilize cheese outside of just putting it on a cheese board. So we are using the plain Green Dirt Farm fresh cheese, which if you've ever had a chev, a fresh goat's milk cheese, it's very similar, but it doesn't, as Sara said, it doesn't have that goaty flavor. It doesn't have a barnyardy flavor. It's very sweet, and it really just has a lot of just gorgeous kind of like almost, it has a real nuance to it season by season. And one of the things that Sara did not mention when she was chatting is that because these animals are grazing on grasses, the grasses change throughout the season. So, what you're going to have in the prairie in summer is not the same thing you're going to have in the prairie in spring, fall, even winter. And so the cheese reflects that flavor, depending on when you get it, especially the fresh cheese. So I'm kind of like getting my mushrooms going. I've reserved some of my pasta water, and this is really kind of the key to the success of making the cream sauce with the fresh cheese. I've already cooked off my pasta. All right, I want my mushrooms to go a little bit farther, so I'm going to turn this up just a tad bit more and let them cook. So the other cheese that I'm going to be using is her Prairie Tome. Can you see that, the rind on that? It is absolutely gorgeous. And it is an aged cheese, clearly. Can you see me through all the steam? It's an aged cheese, and I have grated it so that I'm going to put this on as kind of a finishing touch when I finish up this dish. And so to marry with those beautiful sheep's milk flavors, along with, the mushrooms, I've also crisped up, that's hard to say. I've crisped up some prosciutto. This actually happens to be from Volpe here in St. Louis. And all you have to do is take that prosciutto out of the package and put it into a skillet with a tiny, tiny bit of olive oil, and it'll crisp up. It changes the flavor and the texture completely. All right, so I think we're good.
I wish we had smell-o-vision right now so that we could smell all the garlic and prosciutto and the cheese. You held the cheese up to the camera, and I was like, oh, I want to smell it so bad.
I feel like I'm getting my head closer and closer to the steam to try to get in there.
Well, and I keep calling Lydia's glass of wine. I'm going to have a glass of wine once we turn the cameras off. I'll tell you that. That looks good. All right, so now my mushrooms they're pretty good. If I was cooking this for myself, I probably would let them go a little bit farther so we can go brown. And so this is just some rigatoni, or actually some penne. I'm going to stir this around, kind of get it all coated. And here's where the magic happens. All of this reserved pasta water, when you're making pasta, don't throw your pasta water away. It contains, number one, the salt that you put into the pot, so really good seasoning, but then also a lot of the starch that kind of comes off of the pasta during the cooking process. So this is the fresh cheese, and I'm just adding it in. And you can see I didn't just dump all of my water in. I'm going to add it in bit by bit. But this is how easy it is to make a sheep's milk cream sauce. You just have that hot pasta water. You see how that's like just churning into this silky pasta sauce. And oh my gosh, now you really do wish you had smell-o-vision. And, you know, I think a lot of people get nervous about making cream sauces. They think they have to make a bechamel or that's going to split or something like that. And this could not be easier. You get really, really deep flavor with all of that creamy texture that you want. Yum. Ooh, yum. This looks really good. Oh, I can't hear you, Joe.
Sorry, we just want a quick reminder to everybody that we send out this recipe in the email prior to this event, and we're going to post it in Chew and the Lou later. So you have the recipe for making this delicious pasta dish that Cat is demoing right now. Cat, a real quick question. Someone had asked, what was the name of that, the aged sheep's milk cheese again?
It's the Prairie Tome, Tomme. And the green dirt cheese is available in St. Louis at Schnucks and Dierberg's. They're also available online. So if you go to their website, you can order, and obviously we have them on the Makers Market on the TasteMakers website as well. Okay, now arugula. I love putting fresh greens into my pasta, and arugula has that beautiful spiciness that is going to play against the earthy flavor of that sheep's milk cheese kind of amazingly. And once I get this kind of tossed in and wilted, all I'm going to do is add in that prosciutto, toss it around, and serve it up. It's going to be that easy. Got to sneak a little piece of it.
Wow.
And so this obviously features wintry flavors, right? I mean, we have arugula and mushrooms and prosciutto, but if you wanted to do this, the key to this is knowing how to make the cream sauce. And so you could apply this at any time of year. It would be great with asparagus. It would be great with peas. There are so many different ways that you can play around with just the base of understanding how to make this creamy, dreamy, wonderful sauce. So I'm going to put this over here.
Well, see, as I'm watching this, I'm kind of thinking just to replace all my cream cheese and recipes with the sheep's milk. It's sort of the same texture and profile.
Absolutely. And it has just so much more flavor. Cream cheese just is creamy.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have a lot of depth. And so obviously this fresh sheep's milk cheese, and obviously with Sara's flavored cheeses, if you were to toss in a nettle fresh cheese with a spring pasta, I mean, that would be brilliant. So yeah, so take advantage of the fact that she's already giving you a range of flavors to play with. So there goes.
Yeah. I was just going to say this garlic herb could be your go-to holiday dip. You don't even need to mix anything else in it. It's already done. Just put it in a bowl with some crackers and make a charcuterie board around it, and you're set and ready to go.
Yep, she makes it easy for you. She makes it perfect. And one thing I do want to mention is that Sara does have a shop. If you are anywhere near Weston, Missouri, which Weston is about 45 minutes or so from Kansas City. It's a tourist town. It is absolutely charming. It's right on the Missouri River, and there are tons of things to do, restaurants to visit, and also the Green Dirt Farm shop. And they share a space with Box Vineyards, which is a fantastic Missouri winery that grows Native American grape varieties. So it's really wonderful. You've got your wine and your cheese right there. They have ice cream, tons of Missouri-made products. Okay, so here we have, you can see the pasta finished, and then I'm just going to gild the lily, essentially, with just a sprinkling of this beautifully aged prairie tome, which, even though it's made from the same milk, and that's the magic of cheese, even though it's made from the same milk, from the same sheep, it has a completely different flavor profile. So there you go. And I think it was maybe 10 minutes. This is so easy and quick to make. Whoops.
You're spilling your sauce.
So yummy. I can clean that up. So anyway.
Well, I promise everybody that one of these days during these events, we'll get back to doing them in person, and you guys can actually taste this food that we are showing you, that people like Cat are demoing and putting out for us. And it really does look fantastic. But we wanted to make sure that we highlighted a recipe tonight that's easy to replicate with things that you're going to be able to run to a Schnucks or a Deerberg's or a local grocery store and find. We heard that loud and clear from one of the last Chew in the Loos that you guys really like to have a recipe demo. And this one is going to probably be my dinner tomorrow evening. So Kat, thank you so much for demoing that what looks, and I can smell it through the computer. I keep trying to make that happen. But we're going to transition really now to the Q&A portion of our evening. I encourage anybody that's watching that has questions for Kat or Sara to drop them into the chat window, and we will pop them up. One of the first questions that we did have, these are going to come rapid fire from left and right here for the next few minutes, guys, so hang on. One of the first ones that I found interesting was, how do you feed the sheep in winter, Sara? If they eat the grass, what do they eat in winter?
Good question. Well, we're very fortunate in Missouri to have great grass, and grass that grows almost 9 months out of the year. So it's possible to stockpile some of the grass for wintertime feeding. And we do, in general, have grass for them to eat almost through February. But usually in February and March, we have to feed hay. And also generally at that time, they're getting close to lambing. So we have to give them a little bit of a supplement of grain to help them make sure that they're getting absolutely the best nutrition possible towards the ends of their pregnancies. So in wintertime, we do feed them some stored hay and grain, but we're able to feed a lot of grass almost all the way through the winter, because we're so lucky to live in Missouri, which is a fabulous grass growing state.
Well, I did not know that about Missouri. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Are there certain varieties that you specialize in feeding them? I know that you talked about the whole cycle of it going back in and adding nutrients in, like alfalfa, bluegrass. What's sort of your cycle for your grasses on your farm?
Yeah, well, we really encourage very diverse grasses on our farm. So we have a lot of different grasses, and we're also encouraging and nurturing native prairie grasses to return to our fields, because we know that those grasses have really deep root systems and can help protect our soils against drought, and really have a great scaffolding and structure for building topsoil. So we have lots of different grasses. We also encourage legumes. And for people who don't know what legumes are, they are plants that are actually able to fix nitrogen. That means they're able to take nitrogen out of the air and turn it into a form that plants can utilize. And so they benefit all the plants around themselves, including themselves, but they also have a lot of protein in them because they're able to fix nitrogen. And they make very nutritious feed for the animals. So we encourage lots and lots of different legumes to come on our farm, like alfalfa, clover, bird's foot trefoil. We also encourage the native prairie legumes, which some of you may know as stick tights. If you've ever been walked through a field of stick tights in the fall and gotten your pants completely covered in these little Velcro-like seeds, that's a native prairie legume that you've got stuck to your pants. And we have lots of those on our farm. We also have annual lespedeza, which is a wonderful legume to grow, especially in the summertime when the other clovers don't like to grow. So lots of legumes and lots of different diverse grasses are really important on our farm for both that flavor development, because you need lots of different kinds of grasses and flowers and forbs for the animals to eat to create those flavor compounds in their milk. But we also want them because they're really good for the ecology on our farm.
Wow. So you're not just feeding your sheep grass. Like, you just gave us like a 35-second exposition on the different types of vegetation and how they change the flavor profiles of the cheese you guys make. So it's so much of a science. But on the flip side of that, I remember you kind of mentioning to me when we were prepping for this, really about the values that you guys put into your cheese. You know, how important is that you're not just feeding them grass? Why are you taking all of these painstaking steps to keep the dirt where it needs to go, make sure the nitrogen is there, make sure that there's a variety of vegetation for your sheep to eat? You know, why do you take those steps?
Yeah, well, we like to say that we know that our soil is absolutely the foundation for everything that grows and lives and works on our farm. So we take great care to make sure that we're protecting our soil in every way possible. But you know, that we have a little saying is that it's dirt, grass, sheep, milk, cheese, community. So the dirt helps to grow that wonderful grass that nourishes our sheep. The sheep make fantastic milk. That fantastic milk makes really wonderful cheese that nourishes our whole community. And so, you know, we take a ground up approach to everything that we do on the farm. And, you know, all of those values, you know, sort of permeate everything that we do and are so important to us.
Oh, we can't hear you, Joe.
I think Joe got caught with the mute button on.
It happens all the time, working from home. Sorry, I said the love that you just showed, really, you can tell makes a good product. As I was saying, I'm 2/3 of the way done with my sheep's milk cheese here and crackers that I've been munching on. So when I was watching the episode in preparation for this, I watched the full Warm and Woolly episode, and I was really struck by the segment where I think it's your daughter is talking about the sheep and their personalities and how they each have different personalities. I have to ask, because again, I'm not the scientific one here. Do you have a favorite sheep on your farm?
I have in the past, but you know, of late, it's my daughter is really the one who is tending the sheep. And you know, I get out there and get to do things when there's a big day on the farm, you know, shearing day or breeding day or something like that, when we're doing those kinds of activities on the farm. But I'm not the one who is in that intimate relationship anymore of milking the sheep, unfortunately. So I don't know them as well as I used to in the past, and I don't have any specific favorites anymore, unfortunately.
Well, Kat, I've got a question for you. Your wheel of cheese that you use, did you take the rind off, or would you suggest that if someone was to make it at home to shred the rind in with the cheese?
I included the rind. A lot of cheeses, unless they're covered in wax or something, you can't eat the rind. It's not going to hurt you. Some cheeses have a better tasting rind than others. Like a washed rind cheese that's really kind of stinky. You probably want to cut that one off. But this particular rind, you know, you definitely could eat. It is soft. Sarah, would you eat this rind?
Oh, absolutely. I think I often tell our customers in our tastings that the best flavor in the cheese is usually right underneath the rind. So, you know, you want to make sure that you get that. If you're a little bit squeamish about eating the rind, make sure you get the cheese that's right underneath the rind. But all of our rinds are natural and they're edible. And they add a significant depth of flavor. So you might want to taste it if you're feeling a little unsure about it. Just get a little taste of it. It'll add a lot of depth to the cheese. Of course, it's fine to not eat the rind if you don't want to also.
It drives me crazy when you see people cutting off the rind of like brie or something like that. I'm like, that's the best part. But one of the things I would also mention with these beautiful aged cheeses is cheese is a living thing, and it continues to ripen and to change as it ages. And so the center is going to have a softer texture than what Sarah's saying. When you get a little bit closer to the rind, it's going to have a little bit more of a crystallized, harder texture. And she's right. I mean, the flavor really does change. So yes, there is definitely rind in my pasta.
Now, a follow-up question on that. If I were to make a charcuterie platter and start building it, what would you say would pair really well on that platter with that sheep's milk?
So I think that the key to making a good charcuterie platter is variety. And so if, for example, you have the fresh chev and you have this wonderful prairie tome, you'd want to have, so those are two very different flavor profiles. So you just want to be able to kind of layer it up, like maybe have some dried fruit and some honey and some nuts and some olives, things that are sweet and salty and sour and things that kind of will play with the different flavors of the cheese. What would you say, Sarah? What would you pair with your cheeses?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We often put a really great local strawberry jam on our cheese and charcuterie boards that we have at our shop. We love to put on nuts, as you said, and have little toasts that you can spread the cheese on or eat with the cheese. Also the charcuterie, there's so many great, especially local charcuterie makers like Salumi Bedu over there in St. Louis. And there's a wonderful charcuterie maker in, I believe they're in Indiana, called Smoking Goose, where we get their charcuterie. They have a wonderful tasso ham. The prosciutto that you mentioned from Volpe, Cat, is a fantastic addition to a cheese and charcuterie board. Olives, we love to put olives, and just let your imagination run wild. You can put all kinds of pomegranate seeds and grapes. Yeah.
I think
actually in the second season, I covered smoked goose. So
oh, you did? Great.
Yes. And I'm telling you, if you have a chance to watch that episode, being inside of like their aging room, it smells like brie. Because I mean, it's the same kind of a thing where the same way that you age cheese, you age these cured meats. And so anyway, yes, Smoking Goose is fabulous right there in Indianapolis.
Fantastic. Sarah, do you guys allow visitors to your farm? Do you host events? Like if somebody in St. Louis was going that direction and, they bought a little bit of cheese here at Dearborn's, but were like, I got to go where this is made, can someone from St. Louis drive up there and make a visit?
Well, yes, in non-pandemic years. This year, we opted to cut back on our tour and our events program just because we could not figure out a way to do it safely without crowding people. So this year, no events, but ordinarily we have dinners on the farm, farm to table dinners, and we have tastings. We do cheese tastings, pairings of our cheese with a variety of other local small batch makers. And we also do the tours from our shop in Weston. We'll take a little drive out to the farm and go on a tour of the dairy parlor and the cheese kitchen, but not this year. Hopefully we'll start up again next year.
Sounds awesome.
A plug for Sarah's dinner series. She brings the best chefs from Kansas City to her farm, and they sell out every year. So, I mean, they're a to-do. They're a thing.
Well, speaking of tastemakers and incredible passion going into stuff, Kat, can you share with us some of the St. Louis favorites that you have here?
Oh gosh. Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. There are so many. You mentioned Salumi Bedu. They are absolutely incredible. And then if you're looking for some really interesting beers, the folks at Side Project are they actually create beers with kind of a wine mindset, using a lot of like wild yeasts and barrel aging. Really interesting stuff there. There are so many people doing incredible work. There's Bijou Chocolate. It's a woman who creates these, these bonbons that essentially, it's on the cover of the current issue, that, that look like little tiny jewels. And, they're just, it's kind of, to me, the maker movement is that kind of like farm to table 2.0, where it's not just a farmer growing something in a field and handing it off to a chef to create something. It really is allowing makers like Sara to take a product and turn it into this, this wonderful thing that is so personal and it's so unique. And what I would suggest is that you stop by all of our farmers markets and just kind of wander through and meet the makers who are there. And then there are a number of shops in town that specialize in these small artisan products like Parker's Table and some of these other spots where you really can go in and just kind of, explore all the things that are available.
Okay, so I have a follow-up for you, because you have had quite the travels. You've gotten to meet a lot of very passionate people. Are you starting to notice that a lot of the things from history, or a lot of the old-fashioned ways of doing things, are coming back, and that we've actually found that they're better for us and they're better products that are coming out than processed?
100%. It feels kind of romantic sometimes in a way to say, oh, we're building cheeses from the ground up, but there's a reason why. I mean, as Sara said, it's better for the environment. It's better for people because you have more nutrient dense food, and it's better for the animals. And it tastes better. And so, yes, people are definitely going back to the old ways, and we're finding that it nourishes our body more fully than food that is grown, hastily, just in terms of being able to quickly cultivate it, pick it, and sell it. When people take their time and allow the plants and the animals to do their thing, everybody benefits. And, it's everything from seeing agricole rum being made in Hawaii, where what they're doing is they're saving all of these ancient heritage varieties of sugarcane, which I never thought about the fact that sugarcane had varieties. I think of sugar as being sweet. It's like one thing. But it turns out there are dozens and dozens of varieties of sugarcane, and they all look different and taste different. And so, I was able to go to Hawaii and cover this farm that they farm sugarcane, but then they turn it into agricole rum, which means kind of like wine. They just juice the sugarcane and ferment the juice. It's not made from molasses the way that the rum the more prevalent rum that you're used to is made. So it's being able to do this work. I get to immerse myself in the lives and the work of these people who are deeply passionate about what they do, and what they produce is an extension of themselves. It's very, very personal to them. And it's something I wouldn't trade for the world. I love it.
Well, that leads me to one of my last questions here, which is, having traveled the country or the world even to cook and eat and taste, if somebody slaps a plane ticket down in front of you right now and says, go eat in some part of the country, what part of the country are you going to?
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. It depends on the time of year. I really think that Missouri, frankly, we have one of the most interesting and diverse environments here in Missouri, the way that we have the Ozarks that kind of meet with the rivers that intersect the Missouri and the Mississippi. So if you kind of do a little bit of research, you'll be surprised to find out how biodiverse Missouri is. I mean, the thing is that every region is so different. I mean, you go to the desert Southwest, and the flavors there are these vibrant, desert paintings. And when you go to Maine, you're having fresh seafood straight out of the water. It's hard to pick a favorite. But if I was to pick a place around the world that I could eat, my favorite spot would be Turkey. I went to Turkey when I was a kid, and Turkish food is kind of like comfort food to me. And I mean, it's very simple, but it's lamb and tomatoes and fresh cheese and honey and olives, and it's delicious stuff. Did that answer your question? Kind of.
100%.
Yes.
in a roundabout way.
Yes. So you're experiencing the world just from all the taste and all the beautiful, passionate work that's being done. What's your feeling on it continuing? Do you feel like it's going to grow and over exceed sort of the supermarkets that we have? Is it going to take over so we're all educated on better food and better nutrients and better farming practices?
In an ideal world, yes. Agriculture has a humongous impact on the environment. And I think that people need to become educated with regard to their consumer choices. Just look at, for example, where most shrimp comes from. Just Google it, and you will probably be making different choices once you realize where and how the majority of the shrimp that we eat in the United States is cultivated. That said, a big part of what I hope to do with the work that I do is educate consumers with regard to how food can and should be made so that they can make decisions that will have a positive impact. And, truly with the pandemic, which, Sara mentioned, this is a really precarious time for the independent food community, not just restaurants, even though we hear a lot about restaurants. It's also about the cheesemakers, the winemakers, the fishermen, the people who, are raising cattle and hogs and eggs, the people who are supplying the restaurants. It's a reverberating impact, and more people are cooking at home, which I think it's a good thing. We need more people to cook and learn how to cook. But what we do need to see is more locally and sustainably produced products readily and easily available to American consumers. And I do think that grocery stores, like grocery chains, are hearing that from their consumers, and they're starting to really make concerted efforts to sourcing as much locally as they can. For example, you can get Green Dirt Farm at Schnucks and Deerbergs. So we're seeing that more and more. So I just think a lot of it starts from consumer demand. If the consumer who holds that dollar in their hand is spending it in the right spot, if they're spending it and understanding that it's like voting, it's voting season. When you spend your money on a certain product, you're voting for the way that that product has been produced and brought to market. So it's really important that consumers understand where and how their food, how it's made and where it comes from.
Awesome. Well, I have one final question because this is Chew in the Lou Live, and we're all about the St. Louis food scene. I do have a question, and Sara, I want you to play along too. You may not know some of these foods because you're not in St. Louis or from St. Louis, but I like to gauge this for all the guests we have, and that is just a quick run through with a thumbs up or thumbs down on specific St. Louis foods and if you like them or not, because some of them are very polarizing, and it's always funny to see what people think about certain things. So, Sara, if you know any of these or have had any, feel free to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, or maybe one of these, like, okay, I'll try it if I haven't. Cat, you should know what all of these are because you're from St. Louis, and they've all been in Feast magazine probably 50 times. But we'll start with pork steaks.
Oh, thumbs up.
Thumbs up for pork steaks. All right, good. Gooey butter cake.
Thumbs up if it's not too sweet. I like it, but sometimes it can be too sweet.
All right. Toasted ravioli.
Again, it needs to be the right kind, like a fresh ravioli. So I'm in the middle. It can be bad, but it can also be truly delicious, especially with the salty marinara.
All right. See, that's the feedback I want. And then lastly, and this is the big polarizing question, does Provel cheese belong on pizza?
What did you say, on or off a pizza?
On pizza. Does it belong on pizza?
It belongs on St. Louis style pizza. And I am not from St. Louis. My father was military. We moved all over. But I can remember the first time having Emo's Pizza when I was in college at the Emo's that's right off of Hampton. You can see it from the highway. And I got a small, and I liked it so much that I went back and got a second. So I am a fan.
Well, fantastic. Well, that's a great way to end our show tonight. I do want to give a big thanks to Lydia Gwin for helping to co-host tonight. Thank you to Cat Neville and Sara Hoffman from Green Dirt Farms for being our guests tonight. Lydia and I do want to raise our glasses and toast to our two guests that we have with us this evening. Yes, toast with that pasta, please do. That's fantastic. Thank you guys both. Members, everybody have a great night. It was great seeing y'all. We'll send out that recipe and we'll see you on the next Chew in the Lou Live.
Good night. Thank you.
Chew crew.